create that conducive environment where people can feel, look, if I open up a factory tomorrow, I will make a better return than what I would make if I put my money on stocks or if I put my money on the bank, because then I can become more productive and then we can create the jobs for people. That is very, very critical for us. But just to correct the one point, remember when Stefan and the other CEOs came, they were only looking at 4 sectors in the economy. So they were looking at media, they were looking at security, they were looking at wholesale and retail, and the 4th sector, ICT sector. And what we said to them, look, we must add to that agriculture, because we must eat food. And we don't need to import food. We can grow it here and sell it here. And agriculture and also tourism. Because remember, when people visit our country now, our currency is weak. But for a European and for an American that wants to visit there, it's cheap for them. And so therefore we must focus on our strength to grow our economy.
Also focusing on the entrepreneurial spirit, or inculcating that kind of a culture, because we're still growing, or rather producing graduates that are dependent on employment elsewhere as opposed to creating their own opportunities. Mr. Lauber, what can be learned in that space?
When we created the plan to create 100,000 jobs, we consulted 20 different industries. And invariably the topic of enterprise development, supplier development came up. You're correct. There's only so many jobs that are in the big companies, but there are many, many, many other small companies out there. And when we talk about skills development, unfortunately, these guys are usually not touched. They're left out. They're struggling to run their businesses and are not brought into the fold. So a definite part of any strategy was, how can big business work with smaller business? Because when small business grows, they can hire. Then the second thing is digitalization was a big topic. As the world becomes more and more technically enabled, we're going to have job losses. So the future of work is called sometimes a gig economy. People who are contract workers, freelancers. And these people need to be entrepreneurs, because you're now a one-man, one-woman business. So I think we need, from the school days already, inculcate the spirit of entrepreneurship, and we need to put the necessary mechanism in place to help the small entrepreneur to get going and big business to support the small guy.
Is business already doing that adequately enough, especially in growing township enterprises, township economies, where communities can own their own means of production? They have facilities to financial services and even credit facilities. Mr. Hlongo, you think there's a space there, but it would require some policy reform, because at the moment it's quite rigid and it's only monopolized by a few.
Definitely. Look, we can have as many opportunities in the townships and all over the place, but are they sustainable? In other words, do we just do it because we have to do it, or someone will benefit by doing? Because the supply development programs that we have in South Africa currently, they are more focusing on us or the big corporate achieving certain scores in terms of them doing business with government. But it's not really looking at sustaining what you give to people, what you give to these township entrepreneurs. But secondly, Cindy, you know, our focus is more on the graduate creating jobs or doing interviews. It cannot happen. It's not possible. For you to be able to run a sustainable and profitable and successful business, you need to have been in the industry. You need to have been exposed into that industry. After 10 years only, I started my own business, and that's why it's successful. But we are expecting people to jump from matric and open business that are going to employ people. It's not going to happen.
I also like to double that up, okay? I think this is a common myth that you're young and therefore you're full of energy and creativity, and therefore go out there, fish for yourself, and you shall be successful. I'm an entrepreneur myself, you're an entrepreneur. We both know how hard it is, okay? So that whole assumption that the young kid will just go and shoot the lights out, I think it's unrealistic. We had Bill Gates who did it. We had Zuckerman from Facebook who did it. But these are a few cases amongst them, a lot of people. So I totally agree with you. If you do not have the knowledge on how to run a business, you're not going to succeed.
Yes,
So
but you at
corporate-
least need the opportunity. And if you just take example, the township economies where it was anchored mainly by informal traders or spaza
Yes.
shops, etc., the dichotomy then came in terms of survival and coexistence. The big shopping centers being put there you know, taking away those opportunities as opposed to embracing what was already there.
Let me just come in there. Look, you spoke about the township economy, okay? And I know the Gauteng government is having a massive program to provide support, you know, for our township entrepreneurs. But just to mention two other areas, there's two sectors that is totally dominated by black people. And we actually look beyond it. The one is the taxi industry, and the other one is soccer. Now, we don't see that as an industry, but it is an industry. Okay, people play soccer weekends, it creates jobs, it keeps entrepreneurs busy and going. So we must strengthen those things, okay? The other thing that I wanted to mention, the new phenomenon that came in is Uber. You know, there you find a person, buy a car, get the software and it gets going. There was competition coming in there now, because Uber used to have a monopoly. Now there's a South African product called Taxify. Taxify is asking less than Uber. And so more people, most of the
It's also multinational, but I get your point. In
yes,
the sense
the
that
one
there's
I'm
more
saying to
players.
you is this, look, you need to have that passion. You want to be a person that wants to do and solve other people's problems, and that is very critical.
Yeah, but that in itself is also, you could say it's dominated by black people, let's say in the taxi industry, but not the manufacturing. It's not the vertical value chain thereof. You're still reliant, dependent on finance from a third party, having to pay exorbitant interest rates and barely surviving.
But that is a support the government must provide. You see, if I'm going to pay a lot of money for the cost of capital, it's going to make me uncompetitive. If you go tomorrow to the IDC with a brilliant business plan, I'm guaranteeing you 2 out of 100 will be helped. The other 90 will be turned away. I mean, that's the problem that our people are facing. The Chinese don't have the same problems like we have because their government support them.
So again, policy reform from what I'm hearing.
Can I double up what you said earlier about the integration of the value chain, or what you said about the township economies? If you would add up all the money that people earn in a township, these are massive and massive amounts, okay? But most of that money leaves the township again because there's no manufacturing taking place into the township. So when we had our wholesale and retail discussion, the task team for that sector, we came to that conclusion. How can we bring productive enterprises into the township? For example, why must we not produce our own bread, just to give an example, okay? And there's candles and so forth. And how can we bring the issues, the goods that are consumed in a locality, manufacture them there? The second thing is how can we help the small trader? So we came up with a concept called a business in a box. Business in a box is all the best practices, all the training that needs to go along, let's provide that. We are also working with a company called Bodybox, who has an app in place where the spaza shop owner can order online immediately what he wants, and township entrepreneurs deliver the good to the spaza shop. So you're correct. We need a total rethinking of the value chain, from production to wholesale to retail, and that is one of the topics. So very important for the Job Summit. It's more than just well wishes of good intentions, but we have practical intervention in place to create those jobs.
Okay, Mr. Hlongwa, a good initiative nonetheless, even with notwithstanding the challenges ahead.
Definitely a good initiative, but obviously it is not enough by the private sector. And just 2 points. On the township economy, I think my colleague spoke about the malls that are being brought into township, but the problem is those malls are not accommodating the township entrepreneurship, because the rental, first of all, is very high. But second point is people from township, they don't want people to bring anything. They have these manufacturing companies there. They have all those things. What they need is they need support in terms of finance. They can do it themselves, but they need support in terms of skills, in terms of finance.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks indeed for your time. And you at home on social media will keep you updated on the developments or the next community engagement with regards to the Job Summit. And on to other news, a few ANC